The Saints 2025 draft class is set, and overall I think there are more positives than negatives in their draft. The team was not able to address everything, and realistically they were not going to be able to address everything because they had so many holes on the team that they needed to fill. Pause. There are some spots on the team I wish they could have addressed, like edge rusher earlier and possibly wide receiver or a pass catcher earlier, but overall I think it's a pretty solid draft class for the Saints. Before we dive more into that, I'd appreciate it if you would take 5 seconds to subscribe to my channel. We're trying to hit 10K this year. Stay up to date with all the Saints and NFL content I'll be posting this week and in the upcoming weeks. Stay up to date, subscribe, and let's dive into the 2025 Saints draft class. So this is the Saints 2025 NFL draft class, and overall when I look at this, I think it's a pretty solid set of players who they took this year. Now when I look at this though, the thing that stands out the most to me when I look at these set of players and the positions they play and when they were taken, the thing that stands out the most to me is that the Saints clearly are not going all in on trying to get 10 wins in 2025, but more so they're trying to set themselves up for the future. And they're kind of leaning into this rebuild. The Saints drafted Kelvin Banks with a top 10 pick. They didn't necessarily need to tackle immediately or that early, but Kellen Moore is a guy who said he wants to build out his team through the trenches. And what does he do with this first pick as the Saints head coach? He drafts an offensive lineman who he probably wants to be the foundation for the offensive line and for the team moving forward. Then they drafted a quarterback in the second round, the highest the franchise has drafted a quarterback in over 50 years since Archie Manning was taken with the second overall pick. Kellen Moore saw a guy that he loved going through the draft process in Tyler Shough, and drafted him to be his guy, be the starting quarterback and possibly the franchise QB if it works out. Kellen Moore saw Tyler Shough and said, that's the guy who I want to run my offense. That's the guy who I want to build my scheme around. Him at quarterback with Kelvin Banks protecting him, that's why I want my offense to be built upon. And he went out there and took him. Drafting a quarterback that early is both a win now move, but also more importantly, trying to establish a foundation for the future going into the rebuild. And looking at the other draft picks, defensive tackle, safety, linebacker weren't necessarily immediate needs, but the Saints drafted those positions with some pretty valuable draft picks. Cornerback is a position that was definitely going to be a need for the Saints after losing Paulson Adebo, but I feel like if they're trying to go all in on winning the NFC South and getting 10 wins this year, they would have drafted a cornerback higher, but that doesn't mean I don't like Quincy Riley. I just feel like it was a position that they probably might have addressed earlier if they were going all in on winning this division this season. This draft class to me wasn't necessarily to build on the current roster to win the NFC South and get to the playoffs. Obviously that is the goal, but more so this draft class was to establish a new culture and a foundation for the Kellen Moore era. A lot of the guys who the Saints drafted were team captains in college. Kelvin Banks a captain, Tyler Shough was a captain, Stutzman, Neal, Diggs, and I'm pretty sure Sanker was as well. I'm not too sure on Broughton, but more than half of the draft class were team captains in college. That's something that stands out a lot. And I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think that was done on purpose. The Saints have been in desperate need of younger guys to take over as leaders for the team for when guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara are gone and retired. And over the past few years, the Saints have not had those guys. And it really stands out that the Saints took this many players who were team captains and leaders in college. Kellen Moore wants these guys to be the foundation for the future that sets this team up for success, just like how the 2016 and 2017 drafts did that for the Saints, that helped the team have success, but also got a lot of young leadership into the building, which has been very important for the Saints over the years. So the Saints did a pretty dang good job of addressing some needs on the team. They got the linebacker, which was a sneaky need. They got the running back, cornerback, kind of. I think Quincy Riley will be pretty decent. I got to see him play, of course. Sanker, I think, was a good pick. They got the quarterback, but there were some misses in this draft that they didn't necessarily address that a lot of us probably wish they would have. Don't get me wrong, there's some pretty good picks in this draft class on paper for the Saints, but the most frustrating thing to me is the fact they did not address wide receiver or tight end. Basically, they didn't get a pass catcher with a premium draft pick. Like I said earlier, I get Kellen Moore wants to build his team from the trenches out because that's how you win games, and he wants that to be the team's identity. And I'm on board with that. And getting guys on defense to help stop the run, because the run defense was so bad last year, getting guys who can make tackles was very important. But it's just frustrating to see the Saints ignore the exciting skill position group of players yet again, especially when they know that skill position is a need. Mickey Loomis did say that they had their eyes set on some wide receivers that they would have liked to draft and would have gotten a receiver. They had their eyes on some that they really liked, but it just didn't work out. And Ross Jackson added some extra context because they went a few slots ahead, and he did some homework. Shout out to Ross Jackson on some wide receivers who were taken before the Saints ended up going. T-Mac went to the Panthers at 8. Higgins and Burden went before the Saints. I think Higgins was the guy who they were probably trying to target, but I don't know if they would have taken him over the quarterback Tyler Shuck, Kyle Williams, Teslock, and Savion Williams. I think this is probably a guy who they were also looking at. They brought him in for a workout. And the rest of these names, these are just some other names who were taken before the Saints had their pick. But overall, we know wide receiver was a need, and the Saints didn't address it. And Mickey Loomis and the Saints knew it was a need, and they still didn't address it. Wide receiver has been a position needing attention for quite some time, and the Saints just continue to ignore it. They simply just don't invest assets at the wide receiver position. The Saints since 2018 have only used one draft pick in the top 100 at the wide receiver spot, and that was Chris Olave. The Saints needed to address a big body wide receiver to complement Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks, and they didn't get that guy. Also too, Chris Olave has missed time due to injuries. Rashid Shaheed has missed time due to injuries. So has Brandon Cooks. And the depth at the receiver room is really scary. I'm not too sure if I like that receiver room right now. Hopefully Kellen Moore can get these guys cooking. But I really don't like the fact that they didn't take a big body guy and they didn't even get like some depth in there. Because right now the depth is Kevin Austin Jr. and Mason Tipton. And we saw how that played out last year. The Saints could have taken Trey Harris at pick 40. They could have taken Alec Ayomanor at any point on day 2. And they passed on Andrew Armstrong on day 3, which was very confusing. And they also missed out on Nick Nash. You could even argue that they should have taken Tyler Warren because he would have been a fit at tight end and also been a big physical pass catcher for the Saints at pick number 9. So now the Saints got to go with the undrafted free agent route or sign a free agent, maybe like Keenan Allen, but I just really wish they could have addressed the wide receiver spot. The other spot that the Saints missed, in my opinion, in this draft was edge rusher. We know they weren't going to be able to address every single position this year in the draft because the team has so many issues, but edge rusher felt like one that might have been higher on their priority list. Now they did take Fadil Diggs, who I think is a pretty solid pick, especially for a 7th round pick coming off a 7.5 sack season at Syracuse. And he's really fast for his size, but usually with edge rushers you want to take them higher in the draft. The Saints defensive end room is really bad right now. It's Cam Jordan, Chase Young, who they re-signed, Carl Granderson. Those are the main 3 contributors, and I don't know how these guys are going to fit into this new Brandon Staley 3-4 scheme. Maybe they can get more production out of Isaiah Foskey in this new scheme under Brandon Staley, but the room is not an ideal spot, and they could have taken an edge rusher with one of those 3rd round picks, but they didn't. So those are the 2 main misses in my opinion that the Saints should have addressed but didn't. It was wide receiver / tight end, just a physical pass catcher, and the edge rusher. Like if they would have drafted a receiver and an edge rusher in round 3 instead of defensive tackle and safety, I would feel probably a little bit better about the draft class. And I'm not saying anything about Broughton or Sanker. I think those are good players and good picks. I'm just kind of going back and forth here. You could say cornerback is another one. In my opinion, I like Quincy Riley, especially at the 4th round pick. He is a little bit smaller, but then you see that the Saints passed on Will Johnson and Trey Amos and Siobhan Revel. It does hurt because the Saints cornerback room is very concerning right now. So hopefully the Quincy Riley pick works out. I like the pick, but that's another one you might want to see the Saints maybe pick higher than the 4th round or address it higher. Maybe they go sign Asante Samuel, but that's another one that is kind of like in the middle for me. Like they could have addressed it higher, but they did address it with a pretty solid pick. We'll just have to see how that one plays out. So those are the main takeaways from the draft class and their approach, but these would be my grades on the Saints draft picks. So my first grade is obviously going to be on Kelvin Banks. This is a pick I know a lot of you weren't fans of. You wanted to see something exciting, so did I. But offensive line, if Kelvin Banks turns out to be really good, no one's going to complain about this because he's going to be the foundation and cornerstone of the offensive line for like 10 years. The overall, on paper, I think it's a really solid pick, really good, team captain, played at a big school, the complete opposite of Trevor Penning. He doesn't need development. He played at a big school, played against good competition, and played really good against good competition. I think Kelvin Banks, I think that pick's like a B+, A-, that within that range. Quarterback Tyler Shough, the Saints' second round pick. Man, is this one very interesting. Hated the pick at first, and then you see the clips of him that go viral, pointing him in a negative light. And look, it is a little bit concerning that he had 3 season-ending injuries, and that he's going to be 26 years old as a rookie, and that his pro comparison is Derek Carr. Although I do think he's more so of like an athletic Jared Goff. I do think he has a good arm. I think he's better than people are giving him credit for, but it sucks that they might have been able to get him in the 3rd round and they passed on Trey Harris. But overall, I think the Tyler Shough pick, I hope he proves a lot of people wrong. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm not going to root against him. I'm probably going to give it like a C+-ish, mainly because too, Kellen Moore's first time head coach, he saw a guy who he really wanted, fell in love with the tape, and said, I want that guy to be my quarterback. So I give it like a C+, like it'd be like a 78-ish, 77 within that range. Vernon Broughton, the Saints' first 3rd round pick, the defensive tackle. This is one that, I just gotta see it play out because I wasn't a big fan of the pick. I think he's a solid player. He should help out the Saints' run defense. The Saints need day 1 starters, and right now he's a rotational guy in a pretty crowded defensive tackle room with Brian Brzee, Nathan Shepard, Colin Saunders, Devon Gottschall, and Christian Boyd. Like, there's like 5 to 6 defensive tackles in the Saints room right now, and using a 3rd round pick on a guy who might just be a rotational guy at first is a little disappointing. I like the player though. I'd like to see him get some playing time. I want to see what he can do. I'd probably just give this one a C within like that 74, 75 range. Got to see it play out. Got to see all these picks play out, but these are just my initial draft grades for the Saints. And the Saints' second 3rd round pick, safety Jonas Sanker. This is one I did like quite a bit. He's a guy who is a tackling machine. Maybe gets another secondary player in the pipeline for when Tyrann Mathieu is gone. I like the pick. Really good player. Can contribute on special teams early. Can get in on the rotation. Can bring the boom. Can set the tone. I'd probably give this one like a B. I think this is one that is pretty solid for the Saints. The Saints' first day 3 pick, the linebacker Danny Stutsman in the 4th round. Love this pick. I probably give this one like a B+, maybe an A-. I'm like at the 88 to 89 range. Really love this pick. This dude's a beast, tackling machine. Linebacker was a sneaky big need for the Saints. Getting this guy in the 4th round, I think, was definitely a pretty good value pick for them for sure. I love the juice he brings. I love his personality, and I think it's exactly what the Saints defense need. Not only does he bring that, but he's really good on the field as well. He's someone who I can definitely see being a fan favorite if he gets playing time. Again, another rotational type player, but he might be a linebacker 3 or 4 right now. Definitely want to see this guy play though. I'm excited about this pick. Quincy Riley, the cornerback, again in the 4th round. Pretty solid pick. I don't know a whole lot about him. Did some reading, watched him play a little bit. I think he's a pretty solid pick. He's definitely a guy who should have gone earlier in the draft for sure. The Saints needed a cornerback. He's probably going to see playing time pretty early on. Right now, I'll probably give that one like a B-ish, like an 83, 84, something like that. I like the value pick, and they got a guy who probably should have been gone earlier in the draft. 6th round, running back Devin Neal. Love it. A. It's an A. Great value. 6th round pick. Usually those are guys who are camp bodies and are fighting to make the practice squad. He might be the 2nd best running back on the team right now. The Saints needed a running back, and getting a contributor in the 6th round is insane. He probably would have been a day 2 pick on most other years, but given this is a deep running back draft class, he got pushed out, and even then he should have been picked in like the 4th round. Love the pick. Absolute steal for the Saints. Love the Devin Neal selection. The tight end Malachi Matavo, I think that's how you say his name, out of UCLA. Don't know much about him. I'm just going to give this one like a C-, C. 7th round pick, pass catcher, has the right frame, has decent blocking capabilities and skills. Got to see it play out though. He does have an opportunity though to compete for that number 3 tight end spot. Don't know much about him, so I'm just going to give it like an C-ish grade. In their final pick, Fadil Diggs. This is a pretty solid pick, getting a guy who had 7.5 sacks at Syracuse last season. Big, speedy guy coming off the edge at an important position. I'd probably give this one like a C+, like a 78. That's probably where I put the Fadil Diggs selection for sure. Team captain, a lot like these other guys. That's kind of where I'm at with him. But overall, if I had to rate this draft class for the Saints, I'd probably give it like a 7.5 out of 10. like a C+, B- ish, somewhere in that range. On paper, a lot of solid picks, but also too some rotational guys when the Saints need day one starters. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Maybe the coaching staff gets these guys starting day one because they have no ties to Demario Davis and they have no ties to Colin Saunders. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I think overall a solid draft class for the Saints. We won't truly know though how these picks turn out until down the line, like 2 years from now, but just my initial feeling, I think it's pretty good. It's solid. I'm excited to see these guys play, excited to see these guys in camp and practices, and see how they work under Kellen Moore in this new era of Saints football. Let me know your thoughts on the Saints draft class down in the comments below. I appreciate it if you watch the video. Make sure to subscribe. We're going to have all the Saints and NFL content coming at you in the upcoming weeks. We're trying to hit 10K this year, and we should have the undrafted rookies free agent video out tomorrow. My name's Cash, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one. Peace.